students. In this recording, I would like to start with an interesting topic. Before I get into the topic, let me give you a brief introduction to the topic. Students, all of you must have be aware of the fact that only about 25% of the Earth's surface is suitable for the existence of life. Correct? And that part of Earth is called as biosphere. And in this biosphere, we see variety of life existing, isn't it? We see wild animals, birds, insects, human beings, etc. When we take a closer look at individual species, for example, plants of a particular species, they share very close resemblance with one another. They have similar features, and plants are capable of growing by themselves and reproduce by themselves, isn't it? Similarly, in insect world, insects of a particular species, for example, butterflies, they have similar characteristics. They also have the capacity to grow and also reproduce by themselves, isn't it? And even in animal world, animals belonging to a particular species have similar features. They also share common features as well as they are also capable of growing and reproducing by themselves. And it is applicable even for human beings. A fetus grows into baby grows into an adult grows into old person. How this development is going to take place? What is responsible for the growth and reproduction of all these living organisms? This is the question that strikes our mind, isn't it? Don't you get this question? Yes. How do these plants and animals grow and reproduce? Let us find an answer for this particular question. The answer for this question lies in the basic structural and functional units of living organisms, that is cells. Whether it is animal cell or plant cell, it is inside these cells there are some non-living molecules which are responsible for the growth and reproduction of living organisms. Students, the cells of all living organisms are composed of non-living molecules which help them grow and reproduce. And those molecules are popularly known as biomolecules. Students, this is the topic I would like to start in this recording. And under this heading, we are going to study what are biomolecules, what are the different types of biomolecules, that is classification of biomolecules, and structural aspects of some important biomolecules and importance of these biomolecules. So let us get into the details of this topic, or we will learn more about these by considering different examples. Students, we know the fact that we need food for our survival. And students, we consume food every day. Do you know what are the essential constituents of food? Yes, the essential constituents of food are carbohydrates, proteins, vitamins, and fats. Right? These are the essential constituents of food, and all these molecules, that is carbohydrates, proteins, vitamins, and fats, are included under the category of biomolecules. These are some of important biomolecules. Apart from this, we also include another class of molecules under biomolecules, that is nucleic acids. Let me type the name, nucleic. So we also include nucleic acids under the category biomolecules. Students, we cannot consider all the biomolecules together for our discussion. So let us first consider carbohydrates, learn in detail about them. Next, we will consider other class of biomolecules. So let us first consider carbohydrates. So first we will take up the topic carbohydrates. Students, now the question is, what are these carbohydrates? What are the molecules that we consider under the category of carbohydrates? In what way they are important for us? Right? What is the significance of these carbohydrates? All this we will learn. Now let us answer the question, basic question, carbohydrates. So as usual, we will consider an example to arrive at the definition or the basic meaning of carbohydrates. To understand the basic meaning of carbohydrates, let me give you an example, and which is a very familiar example for all of you. Students, this is a phenomenon without which life won't exist on Earth, because it is by this process plants are going to produce food for animals. Without food, animals are not going to survive, isn't it? So such an important phenomenon is that. I hope you have got what phenomenon I am talking about. Yes, students, this is photosynthesis. I'm talking about photosynthesis. So let me type that word, photosynthesis. Friends, this photosynthesis is a phenomenon in which inorganic substances or lifeless molecules like carbon dioxide, water are going to be converted into food or carbohydrates along with the formation of oxygen in the presence of sunlight in leaves, that too in the presence of chlorophyll pigment. That is known as photosynthesis. Along with carbohydrates, we get an important byproduct, that is oxygen, without which we will not live. Oxygen is very, very required for our respiration, isn't it? So now, I said these are the carbohydrates that is going to be produced by the plants by a phenomenon known as photosynthesis. Now, what are these carbohydrates? What is the basic composition of these carbohydrates? Chemically, what they are? To analyze that, we need to do an experiment. So let me consider that experiment, which you are all familiar, that you have studied in your previous classes. So this is a very simple experiment. So if you have to prove that the given compound is organic, carbohydrates are basically organic in nature. Carbohydrates are the organic molecules. If you have to prove that they are organic compounds, then take that compound produced by the plant and heat it with copper oxide. What happens is, all the carbon present in the compound gets oxidized into carbon dioxide, passes out of this tube and reaches this tube where we have kept lime water. Carbon dioxide turns lime water milky. That is an indication that carbon is present in the compound that is produced from the plants. Similarly, all the hydrogen present in the compound will be oxidized into water. As the water vapor passes away out of this tube, it turns anhydrous copper sulfate, colorless anhydrous copper sulfate, blue, indicating the presence of hydrogen. So basically, carbon and hydrogen are present, indicating that these carbohydrates are organic compounds. In addition to carbon, hydrogen, they also contain oxygen. That means very basic information about carbohydrates is that they are primarily produced by plants and they contain the elements like carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. So what did I say? These are the compounds primarily produced by plants containing carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. Now we have got some basic information about carbohydrates. So let us move on and consider some more examples and learn more about these carbohydrates. Now students, let me give you some examples. Students, glucose is an important carbohydrate molecule, or simplest of all carbohydrates. The molecular formula for this glucose is C6H12O6. Now, I will write the molecular formula of this compound in slightly different manner, like this. Instead of writing C6H12O6, I will write it as C6H2O 6 times. Does it make any difference? No, because carbon atoms remain same, 2, 6, 12, hydrogen atoms remain same, oxygen 1 into 6, again 6, you'll get back the formula. That means instead of representing molecular formula like this, I'm going to represent it slightly different way. And very shortly you'll come to know why I'm representing the formula in that manner. Similarly, one more example for carbohydrate, fructose. The formula of fructose is also C6H12O6 because both of them are structural isomers. Now, this can also be represented in the same way, C6H12O6. Similarly, one more carbohydrate, sucrose, this is commonly known as cane sugar, whose formula is C12H22O11, that can also be represented in a manner similar to this formula. So how do I write? C12H2O 12 times. C12H2O 11 times it comes, right? C12H2O 11 times. If you multiply, it will get back this formula. Now, Like this, you can take up many more examples of carbohydrates and you can represent them in a manner similar to this formula. Or we can generalize this formula like this. In general, we can write it as CxH2O times. So that means carbohydrates can be represented by one common formula, CxH2O times. Or we can say carbohydrates are the hydrates of carbon. The usefulness of this formula, arriving at this formula, is that we can define carbohydrates as hydrates of carbon, right? Based on that formula, carbohydrates are the compounds represented by the formula CxH2O times, or you can say carbohydrates are the hydrates of carbon. So that is the information that we get from these examples. Now, if you agree that this is the general formula of carbohydrates, then it should be able to include all the carbohydrates fitting into this formula. And you should not have any other class of compounds fitting into this kind of formula. But this general formula, what we have derived now, is going to fit in some non-carbohydrate molecules. Let me give example of that kind. Acetic acid, which is a non-carbohydrate, CH3COH is the formula, structural formula of what? Acetic acid. We can represent this acetic acid also in a manner similar to this formula. How? C2H2O 2 times. C2H2O 2 times, which is very similar to CxH2O times. That means we cannot consider this formula as the general formula for carbohydrates, or we cannot define carbohydrates by this formula, because this is including other non-carbohydrate molecules into it. That means if you take this formula as the general formula, even non-carbohydrates can also be represented by that formula. Then you cannot generalize carbohydrates, or you cannot define carbohydrates using this formula. Then the next question that comes to our mind is, how do we define carbohydrates? So in order to arrive at more meaningful and more authentic, more appropriate definition for carbohydrates, we need to get into some more properties, or we need to look into some more properties of carbohydrates. So let us consider some examples and learn few more properties of carbohydrates, and then we arrive at a more meaningful definition. So let me consider this example. Students, just don't get scared by this diagram. Let me explain each part of it. So here in this diagram, light source is there, and light which comes out of that light source is normal light, and we have kept a polarizer over here, and then plain polarized light, and then a sample tube in which we have taken glucose solution, and the solution which comes out of this is rotated or bent towards right hand side. That is what, and this is the direction of light propagation. Now I am going to prove or arrive at an important property of carbohydrates using this experiment. Students, this is slightly new topic for you. Let me explain in detail. Students, first we need to know what is this plane polarized light. Let me explain that. Students, in ordinary light or normal light, the light components or light particles will be vibrating in all possible directions. As it is indicated in the diagram, it is going to vibrate in all possible directions. When you pass such normal light in which light components are vibrating in all possible directions through a polarizer, through an instrument called polarizer, for example, Nicol prism can be used. Nicol prism. So this, when you pass this normal light through Nicol prism, the light is going to get restricted to one single plane. Instead of vibrating in all possible directions, it vibrates only in vertical plane. So this is in one single plane. That is why plane polarized light. This is known as plane polarized light. So plane polarized light, when you pass such plane polarized light through a solution of a compound like glucose or any other compound, you take solution of that compound and you pass plane polarized light through it, the light which comes out of that tube, if it is bent towards right or left, then the compound taken in the sample tube will be regarded as optically active compound. Students, let me repeat it. When you pass plane polarized light through a solution of any compound, and if the plane polarized light coming out of the tube is bent towards right or left, then the compound taken in the sample tube is considered as optically active compound. That means, what is an optically active compound? Let me type that. An optically compound is one can rotate plane polarized light towards right or left. Right? So that is called an optically active substance. That means glucose is going to rotate the plane polarized light towards right. That means it is an optically active substance. Glucose is an optically active substance. Instead of glucose, if you type fructose, which is also an example for carbohydrate, fructose will be able to rotate the plane polarized light towards left. That means fructose is also an optically active compound. Correct? Fructose. Fructose, that word fructose. Fructose rotates the plane polarized light towards left, and glucose rotates the plane polarized light towards right, as it is shown in the diagram. All those substances, all those optically active substances which can rotate the plane polarized light towards are known as dextrorotatory substances. Dextrorotatory. All those substances, for example, fructose, which can rotate the plane polarized light towards left, are known as levorotatory substances. Levorotatory substance. And students, these terms are very, very important because we are going to learn and we are going to come across these terms more often in the chapter haloalkanes and haloarenes. There also we are going to deal with these terms in detail. So here, in this experiment, what we are trying to prove is that the carbohydrate molecules are optically active. So here I have shown two different examples. Glucose rotates the plane polarized light towards right, which is a carbohydrate molecule, and therefore it is known as dextrorotatory substance. And fructose is going to rotate the plane polarized light towards left, therefore it is known as levorotatory substance. Therefore, you can say carbohydrates as optically active compounds. Then you might ask the question, just by two examples, how do we generalize all the carbohydrates as optically active? Even instead of glucose, fructose, you can take many other carbohydrate molecules. They are going to show optical activity. That means we can say carbohydrates are optically active substances. What are carbohydrates? At this stage, carbohydrates are optically active substances. Let me clear all my writings. Yes, carbohydrates are optically active compounds. Through this experiment, we came to know that carbohydrates are optically active compounds. So now let us look at few more properties of carbohydrates, and then we will arrive at more authentic definition. Now students, take a closer look at this particular structure, and this is the structure of glucose. This is the structure of glucose. In the structure, we can see as many as 5 hydroxyl groups. As many as 5 hydroxyl groups. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 hydroxyl groups. And what about this? This group. This is a functional group. Students, do you know what is the functional group of which functional group is this, or to which class of organic compound such a functional group belongs to? Yes, this is an aldehydic group. This is an aldehydic group. This is an aldehydic group. You can see. So this is aldehydic group. At the same time, these are the hydroxyl groups. You have as many as 5 hydroxyl groups. So now, just by considering the structure, I can say glucose as polyhydroxyaldehyde. Can I say like that? Polyhydroxy hydroxy, because poly means many. It is containing as many as 5 hydroxyl groups and it is containing an aldehyde group. Correct. Therefore, I can call glucose as polyhydroxyaldehyde. Similarly, let me give you one more example. This is the structure of fructose. Here also you can see as many as 5 hydroxyl groups. As many as 5 hydroxyl groups. 3, 4, 5. Correct. And in addition to that, it is having a functional group. Which functional group is this? Yes, it is ketonic functional group. This is the functional group of ketones. Right. So it is containing a keto group and as many as 5 hydroxyl groups. Now I can call this as what? Polyhydroxy ketone. I can call this as polyhydroxy ketone. Polyhydroxy. Whereas this is polyhydroxyaldehyde. Polyhydroxyaldehyde. So glucose is also a carbohydrate, fructose is also a carbohydrate. Like this, you can take many other examples of carbohydrates. In all those carbohydrates, either there will be an aldehyde group or a ketonic group. In addition to aldehyde or ketonic group, they will be containing many hydroxyl groups. So therefore, in general, what we can say, carbohydrates are polyhydroxyaldehydes or polyhydroxy ketones. Polyhydroxyaldehydes are ketones. Students, in the previous example, now we have got 3 basic informations. One, it is carbohydrates are basically produced by plants. They contain carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. And in the other examples, we arrived at the fact that carbohydrates are optically active substances. And through this example, that is looking at the structural features, we can say carbohydrates are polyhydroxyaldehydes are ketones. Now let me show you one more example before I give the complete definition. Take a look at this particular reaction. Here we have a carbohydrate sucrose on hydrolysis. Hydrolysis means, lysis means breaking, hydro means water. By the addition of water, you're going to break down this carbohydrate into 2 simpler units. One is glucose, the other one is fructose. Just now we saw glucose is a polyhydroxyaldehyde and we came to know that fructose is a polyhydroxy ketone. Now we can say carbohydrates are those molecules which upon hydrolysis yield polyhydroxyaldehyde and polyhydroxy ketone, isn't it? So this way also we can define carbohydrates. Now, keeping all these facts, keeping all the examples that we have discussed so far in the mind, we can generalize the definition of carbohydrates as carbohydrates may be defined as optically active polyhydroxyaldehydes or ketones, or the compounds which produce polyhydroxyaldehydes or ketones on hydrolysis. Students, I would have given this definition straight away, but you would have asked again questions. What is optically active substance? What is a polyhydroxyaldehyde? What is a polyhydroxy ketone? Now there is no question of asking such questions because already I have given all the examples which described what is optically active substance, what is polyhydroxyaldehyde, and what is polyhydroxy ketone, or what are those compounds which produce polyhydroxyaldehydes or ketones, like in this example, that is sucrose. Now students, this is more meaningful and more authentic definition for carbohydrates. So now we could able to define carbohydrates. Now let us learn more about these carbohydrates. Let us consider some important molecules of carbohydrates which are very familiar in our day-to-day life, and note down their important features and try to segregate them or try to put them into different groups. That is classification of carbohydrates. So students, to learn about classification of carbohydrates, let me consider a few examples. Students, you are all familiar with this. This is sugar cane, right? And from sugar cane, we get a carbohydrate known as sucrose. And milk you have seen, right? From milk, we get a carbohydrate Can you think of which carbohydrate it is? Yes, it is lactose. In milk, we have a carbohydrate lactose. And another important example, honey. Students, can you think of which is the carbohydrate molecule which is present in honey, particularly which is known for its sweetness? Yes, it is fructose. Now, students have considered three important examples which are all very, very familiar in our day-to-day life. Sucrose, lactose, fructose. Correct? Now, these three carbohydrates or many other carbohydrates belonging to this particular group will share a common feature. At least for these examples, we can share one common property, that is all of them are going to have sweet taste. Whether you take sucrose, lactose or fructose, they have sweet taste. That is the reason why these carbohydrates are together known as sugars or saccharides. So sucrose, lactose, fructose, we call them together by the name sugars or saccharides. Students, in Greek, saccharon means sweet. Greek, saccharon means sweet. Therefore, these are called by the name saccharides or sugars. Sugars are those substances which have sweet taste. So now we came to know that there are some carbohydrates which are sweet in taste, and they'll be put under the category of sugars or saccharides. Now let us move on and consider a few more examples. Same examples, that is sucrose, lactose. In addition to that, I have considered one more example. Now, all these three carbohydrate molecules, that is sucrose, lactose, raffinose, all of them are subjected to same reaction, that is hydrolysis. As I have already told, hydrolysis means breaking down a compound by the addition of water. Lysis means breaking, hydro means water. So by adding water or in the presence of water, these substances will be broken down into much more simpler units. So sucrose, when it is subjected to hydrolysis, it can be broken down into two more simpler units. One is glucose, the other one is fructose. Lactose upon hydrolysis gives us two more simpler units, glucose and galactose. Similarly, raffinose gives three more simpler units, that is glucose, galactose and fructose. Now, those carbohydrate molecules which upon hydrolysis can be broken down into 2, 3 or 4 or more than one simpler units are called by one common term. Let me repeat it again. Those carbohydrate molecules like sucrose, lactose, raffinose or any other carbohydrate which upon hydrolysis yield 2 or 3 or 4 simpler units or simpler sugar molecules are called by one common term, that is oligosaccharides. What are oligosaccharides? Oligosaccharides are those carbohydrate molecules which upon hydrolysis yield a few sugar units. Here in Greek, oligo means a few. A few means 2 to 9. So that means any carbohydrate which upon hydrolysis yield either 2 or 3 or up to 9 sugar units, that is called as oligosaccharide. Right? So now sucrose is an oligosaccharide, lactose is an oligosaccharide, raffinose is an oligosaccharide. Among oligosaccharides, again we have specific names. All those oligosaccharides which upon hydrolysis give only 2 sugar units are called by the term disaccharides. Among these examples, sucrose and lactose are disaccharides. So disaccharides are those oligosaccharides, or disaccharides are those carbohydrates which upon hydrolysis give 2 sugar units. Here sucrose is giving glucose and fructose, lactose is giving glucose and galactose. If an oligosaccharide or if a disaccharide gives different sugar units upon hydrolysis, then it is known as heterodisaccharide. So these two are examples of heterodisaccharides. heterodisaccharides. And then you might be thinking there might be homodisaccharides also. Yes, homodisaccharides. Homodisaccharide, example maltose. We'll be learning about all these disaccharides in detail little later. Students, heterodisaccharides are those disaccharides which upon hydrolysis give different sugar units. Homodisaccharide is such a disaccharide which upon hydrolysis give same sugar units. Both of them will be same. For example, maltose upon hydrolysis give 2 glucose units. Now what about this? Raffinose is giving 3 sugar units, glucose, galactose and fructose, and this is going to be called by the term trisaccharides. Trisaccharide. So this is an example for trisaccharide. Trisaccharides are those carbohydrates which upon hydrolysis give 3 sugar units. What about those which give 4? Tetrasaccharides, pentasaccharides, hexasaccharides. Up to 9 you can call them by different names. Right? If it is beyond 10, we are going to call it as polysaccharides. We will arrive at those very shortly. Now we have learned about oligosaccharides, disaccharides, trisaccharides and examples of that. So let me give you some more examples. Now let us consider these sugars, glucose, fructose and galactose. I am calling these as sugars because all of them are going to have sweet taste. If you subject these sugars to hydrolysis in the presence of acid, if they are broken down into much more simpler units, again we are going to call by the term oligosaccharides or polygosaccharides. But these units, that is glucose and fructose and galactose, cannot be further hydrolyzed. No hydrolysis here. And such carbohydrate molecules which upon hydrolysis give no simpler units, no further hydrolysis, is known as monosaccharides. All those carbohydrates which upon hydrolysis give no further simpler units, then they are known as monosaccharides. Or monosaccharides are those carbohydrates which cannot be further hydrolyzed. So what are monosaccharides? Monosaccharides are the carbohydrates which cannot be hydrolyzed further into simpler units. Then what are oligosaccharides? Oligosaccharides are those which upon hydrolysis give a few monosaccharide units or a few sugar units. Now students, we learned about the meaning of sugars, we learned about the meaning of oligosaccharides, monosaccharides, disaccharides, trisaccharides, etc. So let us summarize what we have learned so far. So before we summarize that, let me consider a few more examples and categorize them, and then we'll consider the summary of all that. Now students, the image that you are looking at is an example for a carbohydrate, which is corn flour, which will be very rich in a carbohydrate known as starch. A carbohydrate known as starch. It is represented by the formula C6H10O5 N times. Similarly, one more example. Yes. So when you look at this image, you can recall the carbohydrate which is stored in the muscles. You might have learned it in biology. Yes, the carbohydrate which is stored in muscles is glycogen. Glycogen is also represented by the same formula C6H10O5 N times. Now, one more example. Yes. And that carbohydrate is an essential constituent of the plant cell wall. The plant cell wall is made up of an important carbohydrate molecule, that is cellulose. Again, that is represented by the same formula C6H10O5 N times. Now we have 3 examples of carbohydrates: starch, glycogen, cellulose. And if you subject these 3 carbohydrate molecules to hydrolysis, they are going to give us many monosaccharide units. So if you subject these 3 carbohydrates or any other such carbohydrate on hydrolysis, they give many monosaccharides. Now all those carbohydrates which can yield many monosaccharides upon hydrolysis are going to be called by one common term, that is polysaccharides. But they are known as polysaccharides. And polysaccharides are also called by the term non-sugars because they don't have sweet taste. Then you might be asking the question, then saccharide term is there, you said saccharon means sweet. These are the carbohydrates which do not have sweet taste, therefore non-sugars we call them. Polysaccharides, the term itself is such that polysaccharides are not having sweet taste, therefore they are called as non-sugars. You don't go by the term saccharide. Saccharon means sweet, therefore polysaccharides also must be having sweet taste. They don't have sweet taste, that is the reason why they are called by the term non-sugars. So now students, let me repeat it. All those carbohydrates which upon hydrolysis give many monosaccharides are called polysaccharides. Or polysaccharides are the carbohydrates which on hydrolysis give many monosaccharide units. Now we will take up the summary of what we have learned so far. Yes, what we have learned so far, we have learned the meaning of carbohydrates. Right, what are carbohydrates? Carbohydrates are optically active polyhydroxyaldehydes or polyhydroxyketones. And we have divided these, or we can categorize or classify these carbohydrates into three main types. One is monosaccharide, the other one is oligosaccharide, the other one is polysaccharide. Which are those? Monosaccharides, oligosaccharides, and polysaccharides. Right? So now among these, each one of them will be taken up separately and we will have to discuss in detail about each category. So first we will take up monosaccharides. Now students, these monosaccharides are the simplest of all carbohydrates and they are the building blocks of higher carbohydrates. Generally they are made up of 3 to 7 carbon atoms. They are made up of 3 to 7 carbon atoms. Monosaccharides are simplest of all carbohydrates. They are the building blocks of higher carbohydrates. They are generally made up of 3 to 7 carbon atoms. Right? In addition to 3 to 7 carbon atoms, they also might contain an aldehydic group or a ketonic group. Monosaccharides are generally made up of 3 to 7 carbon atoms. They might contain CHO group or CO group. Depending on whether they contain CHO group or CO group, we have two different types of monosaccharides. So if they contain CHO group, we call them as aldoses. If they contain CO as the functional group, we call them as ketoses. So based on whether they contain aldehydic group or ketonic group, we have two different types of monosaccharides, that is aldoses and ketoses. Aldoses are those monosaccharides which contain CHO as the functional group. CHO as the functional group. Ketoses will contain C double bond O, that is ketonic group. That is about aldoses and ketoses. Now, depending on the number of carbon atoms, again we divide aldoses into different types. If they contain 3 carbon atoms, aldo, triose, and 1 aldehydic group. If a monosaccharide contains 3 carbon atoms, 1 aldehydic group, aldotriose. 4 carbon atoms, 1 aldehydic group, aldotetrose, then aldopentose, then aldohexose, then aldoheptose. So let me show you those terms. Depending on the number of carbon atoms present and aldehydic group present, aldoses are classified into different types. That is aldotriose, aldotetrose, aldopentose, aldohexose. At least up to aldohexose, you should be knowing the examples. Let me give those examples because they have been asked in the examination. So aldotriose example, glyceraldehyde. Aldotetrose example, erythrose. Aldopentose is an aldopentose example, ribose. We come across this ribose again when we take up nucleic acids. Nucleic acids contain a pentose sugar. This is the sugar present in that. Then aldohexose, your glucose. Similarly, among ketoses, at least if you remember up to this, that is more than enough. And then ketoses, again divided into ketotriose, ketopentose, ketohexose, etc. Let me show you those terms. If a ketose contains 3 carbon atoms, ketotriose, 4 carbon atoms, ketotetrose, 6 ketohexose, 7 ketoheptose. Examples for at least up to ketohexose I'll give. Let me type the examples. Example for first one is dihydroxyacetone phosphate. Dihydroxy DHAP, and this is one of the intermediates that you see during glycolysis. Ketotetrose example, erythrolose. Example for ketopentose, ribulose. Hexose example, your pseudoheptulose, not required. Up to 6 you should be able to remember the examples. So this is about what are monosaccharides and how they are classified further. Now let us summarize the complete classification one more time and then move to the other topic. Carbohydrates are broadly classified into major categories: monosaccharides, oligosaccharides, and polysaccharides. And monosaccharides are further divided into aldoses and ketoses. And aldoses are further divided into aldotriose, aldotetrose, aldopentose, etc. Similarly, ketotriose, ketotetrose, ketopentose, etc. So this is about the classification of carbohydrates. Now, after the classification, we will have to consider at least important carbohydrate moieties or examples under each category. Monosaccharides, we will consider glucose and fructose. In detail about glucose and fructose, including the structural features, we have to learn under monosaccharides. Under oligosaccharides, we have to consider disaccharides, particularly maltose, sucrose, and one more, that is lactose. We will have to learn in detail. And among polysaccharides, we will have to learn about starch, glycogen, and cellulose. And towards the end, importance of carbohydrates. That will be the end of the topic, carbohydrates. And then we will consider proteins. Then we will consider nucleic acids towards the end of the chapter, biomolecules. Now let us take up important monosaccharides, out of which first we will consider glucose. Students, glucose, I hope you are all very familiar with glucose. And this glucose is going to be abundantly found in grapes. It is abundantly found in grapes. Generally, it is present in fruits, but in larger quantities, it is found in grapes. Therefore, it is popularly known as grape sugar. Since glucose is present abundantly in grapes, it is known as grape sugar. And the glucose is going to look like this. It is a solid amorphous powder. This is how glucose is going to look like. In the medical shops, if you ask for Glucon-D, they will give this powder. So it is immediately going to give us energy. Glucose is energy-rich molecule. It is this glucose molecule which is the final product of digestion of carbohydrates, which will be absorbed into blood and supplied to each cell of our body. Inside the cell, this glucose will be oxidized or subjected to combustion process, where it is going to be broken down into carbon dioxide and water, releasing enormous amount of energy which will be required for our day-to-day activities. Now, this glucose naturally is obtained in grapes, and since it is going to be rotating the plane polarized light towards right, we also call it as dextrose. We call it as dextrose. Glucose is called as dextrose because it can rotate the plane polarized light towards right. It is an optically active substance. And this glucose can also be obtained by the hydrolysis of cane sugar. Sucrose is also known as cane sugar, like that. So when cane sugar or sucrose is subjected to acid hydrolysis or subjected to enzymatic hydrolysis in the presence of invertase enzyme, it is going to be broken down into two simpler units, that is glucose and fructose. Students, this reaction is a common example for the preparation of glucose as well as fructose. Natural source is grapes. If they ask you to write the laboratory preparation of glucose, this is what you can write. This is one of the methods to prepare glucose by hydrolysis of sucrose. One more way to get glucose is to hydrolyze starch. When starch is subjected to acid hydrolysis or enzymatic hydrolysis in the presence of enzyme diastase, then starch is going to be broken down into what? Many glucose molecules. Many glucose molecules, right? We are going to get many glucose molecules. That is by this reaction. And that means we can get glucose by the hydrolysis of sucrose, or we can get the number of glucose molecules by hydrolyzing starch. So this is how we can prepare glucose. Now we looked at the general features of what glucose, that is glucose is generally known as grape sugar because it is abundantly found in grapes. It is also known as dextrose because it is going to rotate the plane polarized light towards right. It can be obtained by the acid hydrolysis or enzymatic hydrolysis of sucrose. It can also be obtained by the acid hydrolysis or enzymatic hydrolysis of starch. Let me move on. Now students, let us get into the structural aspects of glucose. As I have already shown, this is how glucose is going to look like. Now glucose, when I say it is an organic compound, we should prove that it contains carbon and hydrogen. For any compound to become organic compound, basically it should contain carbon and hydrogen. Then how do we show the presence of carbon and hydrogen in glucose? This is the experiment. And this experiment you are all very familiar, you have learned it in previous classes. That is Liebig's estimation of carbon and hydrogen. Right? Now glucose, it's going to be heated with copper oxide in the furnace, and it's going to be oxidized into carbon dioxide and water, which will be absorbed into U-tubes. And I don't have to explain the experiment in detail because you have studied in detail in the previous classes. So now, here, by knowing the amount of carbon dioxide formed and amount of water formed using this experimental data, we can know the percentage of carbon as well as hydrogen and also oxygen, because this compound contains carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. If you find out the percentage of carbon and hydrogen, if you subtract it from 100, you'll get the percentage of oxygen as well. So through Liebig's experiment, percentage of carbon and hydrogen can be estimated, and by subtracting it from 100, you'll get the percentage of oxygen. By knowing percentage of carbon, hydrogen and oxygen, by dividing them by the respective atomic masses, you will get molar ratio. That molar ratio itself is empirical formula. Then empirical formula will be multiplied by N to get molecular formula. And that is how we are going to derive molecular formula. And you have learned about the derivation of empirical formula as well as molecular formula in your previous classes itself. That is why I will not get into the details of that. So what I can say over here is, by subjecting glucose to elemental analysis, we can arrive at the information that glucose contains carbon, hydrogen and oxygen, and its molecular formula is C6H12O6. So glucose is made up of carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. Its molecular formula is C6H12O6. Now the question is, will only molecular formula help us to explain all the properties of glucose? Is molecular formula of glucose is sufficient enough to know the properties of glucose? No, it is not sufficient enough, I will say, because if you have to explain the optical property of glucose, then you will have to show that it contains a specific group in it, specific structural aspects it should satisfy, isn't it? I cannot explain by showing molecular formula. Similarly, glucose is going to reduce Fehling solution into red precipitate, Tollens reagent into black precipitate. I will not be able to explain that by using just molecular formula. So that means all the properties of glucose cannot be explained just by molecular formula. We need to write down a proper structure for the glucose which can explain all the properties of the glucose. So now let us get into the structural elucidation of glucose. Students, by considering some important reactions of glucose, we can get into the structural details of what glucose, or by considering some of the reactions of glucose, we can get important information about the structure of glucose. The first reaction, when glucose is heated with hydrogen iodide, it is going to give us a straight chain hydrocarbon, that is N-hexane. Right? This is going to indicate that all the 6 carbon atoms present in the glucose are present in straight chain. They are present in straight chain, they are present in open chain. Let me repeat that. The reaction between hydrogen iodide and glucose will give us an important information about the structure of glucose, that in glucose, all the 6 carbon atoms are present in straight chain or open chain by giving this product, that is N-hexane. Similarly, another important reaction of glucose, that is reaction with hydrogen cyanide. Glucose, when it reacts with hydrogen cyanide, it gives a cyanohydrin. It gives a cyanohydrin. The group that decides this, the group that is characteristic for any cyanohydrin is this group. How do you say that it is a cyanohydrin? That compound should contain this. So the product obtained from glucose is containing CHCnOH. This is called a cyanohydrin group. Now, what is the information that we get from the reaction between glucose and hydrogen cyanide? Students, keep this fact in mind, that a carbonyl compound, when it reacts with hydrogen cyanide, it will give a cyanohydrin. Or any organic compound, upon reaction with hydrogen cyanide, if it gives cyanohydrin, it must contain a group known as carbonyl group. It must contain a carbonyl group, right? It must contain a carbonyl group, which can be ketonic group or it can be aldehydic group. Together, both of them are known as carbonyl groups. So this reaction, that is reaction of glucose with hydrogen cyanide, gives us a product known as cyanohydrin, indicating that glucose is containing either ketonic group or aldehydic group. In general, these two are known as carbonyl group. So glucose reacts with hydrogen cyanide, giving cyanohydrin, indicating that it is a carbonyl compound. Later on, we should prove that whether it is containing CHO group or CO group by some other reaction. Now let us consider another important reaction of glucose, that is reaction with acetic anhydride. Students, let me give the formula of acetic anhydride. CH3 COO CO twice O. So this is the formula of acetic anhydride. Whenever any compound reacts with acetic anhydride, if it gives acetate derivative, then that compound must contain alcoholic group, that is OH group, OH functional group. An organic compound which contains OH as the functional group, they are called as alcohols. Generally, alcohols react with acetic anhydride to give the corresponding acetate derivatives. So what is that acetate derivative? So if you look at this, glucose is containing 5 hydroxyl groups that we are not aware now at this stage. Just to make you understand, I am telling it is containing hydroxyl groups. Now you can see OH over here and 4 more OH over here. So these among these hydroxyl groups, the hydrogen atoms of these hydroxyl groups will be replaced by CH3CO group of this acetic anhydride, right? CH3CO group of this acetic anhydride. So H will be replaced by CH3CO group. You can see CH3CO group is replaced by H. There are 4 hydrogen atoms, so 4 acetate groups are replaced over here, and there is terminal OH here, and this H is replaced by 1 more acetate group. So overall you can say 5 acetate groups are formed. How many? 5 acetate groups. So for each hydroxyl group, 1 acetate group will be formed in the product. Since there are 5 acetate groups, 4 over here and 1 more over here, a pentacetate derivative is obtained from glucose, then glucose must contain 5 hydroxyl groups. 5 hydroxyl groups. So glucose, when it reacts with acetic anhydride, it consumes 5 moles of acetic anhydride, giving a pentacetate derivative, indicating that glucose is containing 5 hydroxyl groups, right? That is the information that we get from the reaction. Last month, 1 or 2 months back, second PUC students wrote examination. In that examination, 1 5-mark question was related to this particular topic, that they had given, how do you prove that glucose is a carbonyl compound? How do you prove that glucose contains 5 hydroxyl groups? Right? So such questions can be asked. So you should be very careful and you should practice these equations. So for my convenience, I'll put it in the form of flowchart. You should write them individually. This is a separate reaction. This is a separate reaction. This is a separate reaction. Now let me consider one more reaction, one more important reaction. Yes. Glucose, when reacts with bromine water, it gives gluconic acid. Glucose, when reacts with bromine water, it gives gluconic acid. Right? So now this gluconic acid obtained should be from an aldehyde. How do I say that? Glucose, when it is reacted with bromine water, which is an oxidizing agent. Bromine water is a mild oxidizing agent. Mild oxidizing agent. This is a mild oxidizing agent. It can only oxidize aldehyde group into carboxylic acid. It cannot oxidize alcoholic group into carboxylic acid. Alcohols get oxidized into aldehydes. Aldehydes get oxidized into carboxylic acids. Alcohols cannot be directly oxidized into carboxylic acids by mild oxidizing agents. Since bromine water is a mild oxidizing agent, it can only oxidize aldehyde into carboxylic acid. That means that this COH is derived from a CHO group. It has to be an aldehyde group. In this reaction, we proved that glucose contains a carbonyl group, which may be ketonic group or aldehyde group. But here, this reaction clearly suggesting that carbonyl group must be aldehyde group. Now, one more important reaction is that is reaction with strong oxidizing agent like nitric acid. When glucose is treated with strong oxidizing agent like nitric acid, it is giving a dicarboxylic acid, that is saccharic acid. It is giving a dicarboxylic acid, saccharic acid. Now students, this COH we can understand. This is obtained from the oxidation of CHO group. From where this is obtained, COH, this has to be obtained by the oxidation of alcoholic group, isn't it? And generally we get carboxylic acid groups only from primary alcoholic groups, right? Here in the glucose there are 5 hydroxyl groups, we said. This reaction suggested that it is containing 5 hydroxyl groups. Out of 5 hydroxyl group, this group is a primary alcoholic group. This is a primary alcoholic group. Alcoholic group. Right. Whereas these groups are secondary alcoholic groups. If the OH is attached to a carbon which is attached to only one other carbon atom, then it is known as primary alcoholic group. Or OH, if it is attached to primary carbon, primary alcoholic group. If OH is attached to secondary carbon, secondary alcoholic group. This carbon is attached to two other carbons, therefore it is a secondary carbon, and it is attached to, the OH is attached to secondary carbon, therefore it is a secondary alcoholic group. And secondary alcoholic groups on oxidation will not give carboxylic acid, they give mixture of carboxylic acid, and moreover, oxidation of secondary alcoholic groups is very difficult. So primary alcoholic groups get oxidized into directly carboxylic acid in the presence of oxidizing agents like nitric acid. So this COH has to be derived from CH2OH, indicating that glucose is containing one primary alcoholic group. That can be reconfirmed by oxidizing gluconic acid further into saccharic acid by the same oxidizing agent. So here only one COH. If you oxidize this gluconic acid, you will get saccharic acid, because this CH2OH will be oxidized into COH. So this CH2OH, if it gets oxidized into COH, this has to be a primary alcoholic group. That is the indication that it is giving. Now students, let me summarize. So all these reactions are giving important information about structure of glucose. Glucose and treating with HI gives us N-hexane, indicating that all the 6 carbon atoms are in open chain. Glucose reacting with hydrogen cyanide giving a cyanohydrin, indicating that it is a carbonyl compound. It is containing a carbonyl group. Glucose consumes 5 moles of acetic anhydride giving a pentacetate, indicating 5 hydroxyl groups in it. Glucose on oxidation with mild oxidizing agent like bromine water gives us gluconic acid, indicating that carbonyl group is an aldehyde group. Glucose on oxidation with strong oxidizing agent gives us a dicarboxylic acid called saccharic acid, indicating that it contains a primary alcoholic group, which can be reconfirmed by oxidizing gluconic acid to a saccharic acid in the presence of nitric acid. Now, keeping all these facts in mind, Mr. Bayer suggested a structure for glucose, that is open chain structure for glucose, that is this structure. This is the structure suggested by Bayer, which contains an aldehyde group and 5 hydroxyl groups, out of which this is the primary alcoholic group and these 4 are secondary alcoholic groups, whose molecular formula is C6H12O6. Students, I'll stop at this stage and let me continue this topic in the next video. Thank you.